Oh, faithfully conveying value and interpreting great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally talking books. Today I'm diving into The Drunken Botanist, where the bond between plants and booze is totally inseparable. Every tree, vine, or pretty wildflower out there might end up in a bartender's recipe. The relationship between plants and fine wine is super intricate. Turns out wine and beer were invented by sheer luck. Hops just balance bitterness in beer. Gin's key ingredient is actually juniper berries. And wheat, well, it only makes up about half of beer's ingredients. The author, Amy Stewart, is a famous American science writer, especially good at botany and zoology. Her books hit the New York Times bestseller list multiple times, including today's The Drunken Botanist. This book is a top-notch plant science primer and a solid intro to Western drinking culture. In it, the author covers how fruit lines, beer, and spirits are made, showing the process of turning plants like apples, grapes, and barley into alcohol. Plants aren't just for brewing. They jazz up cocktails by adding flavor or even as garnishes for that trendy drink, elevating a drink's look and class. Next up, I'll break down the book from two angles. First, how plants get turned into booze. Second, how plants shape alcohol's taste. First off, let's chat about how plants become alcohol. If you had to name a familiar Western drink, most of us would blurt out wine first. So, we'll use wine as an example to show how plants morph into drinks. But before that, a quick history of grapes. It's crazy they're so popular now because they nearly went extinct. Grapes first popped up 50 million years ago. Then, 2.5 million years back, a huge ice age hit. Glaciers blanketed grape growing areas, almost wiping them out. The survivors were tiny and bitter, nothing like today's plump, juicy grapes. Grapes' big change came from a genetic mutation. Originally, grapevines were dioecious plants, meaning each vine had only one sex. For two vines to reproduce, they needed insects for pollination. Then a mutation occurred, creating a hermaphroditic grapevine. This meant it had both male and female reproductive organs, so it could self-pollinate without insects, yielding way more fruit than others. Our ancestors, who lived by gathering and hunting, saw this fruit-heavy vine and were thrilled, so they started cultivating it. They kept selecting and cultivating plants with the biggest, sweetest fruit. By 5,000 years ago, grapes had become a fairly common fruit. Meanwhile, pottery advanced, letting people crush harvested grapes and store them in clay jars. For grapes to become wine, fermentation needed to happen. Grape skins naturally have yeast, but it wasn't great at fermenting, so the alcohol produced was minimal. Then, by chance, a special yeast from oak trees drifted into a grape-filled jar. This microbe, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, efficiently turned grape sugar into alcohol. After a while, people were amazed to find a sweet liquid flowing from the jar. Wine. So how did brewers' yeast meet grapes? Scientists suggest maybe vines climbed oaks, or people mixed oak fruit with grapes, or insects carried yeast from oaks to sugary grapes. Anyway, humans gradually domesticated this yeast, using it for wine, beer, and bread fermentation. After tasting alcohol's buzz, people wondered, could they boost the alcohol content for a stronger kick? So distillation entered winemakers' toolkit. Way back in ancient Greece, the great philosopher Aristotle described distillation's principle. He keenly observed that heating seawater produced steam, and cooling that steam yielded drinkable water. Ancient Egyptians also recorded using distillation to make perfumes. And in the early Middle Ages, Arabs invented distilled liquor by heating brewed alcohol, collecting the vapor, and cooling it to get much stronger spirits. Regular brewed alcohol is under 20% ABV, while distilled spirits can reach 60%. In China, distilled liquor first appeared during the Yuan dynasty. Li Shizhen's Compendium of Materia Medica noted, Shaoju, burned wine, isn't an ancient method. It originated in the Yuan period. This burned wine was ancient China's distilled liquor, like today's Maotai and Wuliangye Baijiu. Compared to brewed alcohol, distilled spirits have clear advantages. They get you drunk faster, and with high alcohol and low impurities, they last 5 to 10 years at room temperature. Even after opening, they keep over a year. This extended shelf life was precious for ancient people living at nature's mercy, and distillation's birth tied closely to technological advances. Initially, people used ceramic containers for distillation. Later, Romans improved metalworking and used metal stills for better sealing, boosting efficiency. Distilled spirit production soared. Distilling wine gives brandy, a higher proof liquor. Brandy's called the soul of wine. Today, brandy has many varieties. Grape-based distilled liquor is grape brandy. When we say brandy, we usually mean grape brandy. Others get fruit prefixes like apple brandy or cherry brandy. All right, that wraps up grapes and wine for now. To summarizing key principle, turning plants into booze starts with top quality ingredients. Then fermentation converts plant sugars to alcohol, and distillation boosts concentration to create delicious spirits. Having covered production, let's explore how different plants shape alcohol's taste. First, beer. The people's drink. Its main ingredient is barley, but it's not alone. Familiar spirits like whiskey, vodka, and gin also primarily use barley. Barley earned this role because it's the most fermentation-friendly grain out there. Honestly, you could call barley the only grain truly fit for fermentation. Its advantage comes straight from biology and chemistry. In fermentation, sugar transforms into alcohol. That's why sugar-packed fruits like grapes work so well. But grains like barley, wheat, and rice store energy as starch. To brew with them, you gotta convert starch to sugar first. Luckily, water alone triggers this change since every grain is essentially a seed. When seeds sprout, they need sugar for energy. So they contain enzymes that, with water, break starch into sugar. But most grains keep enzyme levels low for sustained nutrition, making starch breakdown slow. Except barley. Barley's enzyme-packed, breaking starch down fast. Brewers even mix barley malt with other grains to borrow its enzymes. Barley malt's a brewer's best friend. Beyond enzymes, barley's crazy resilient. It handles cold and drought like a champ. From Scandinavia to the Middle East, East Asia to the Americas, even poor soil, barley thrives. So barley-based drinks spread everywhere, mirroring wine's origin story. As storage improved, people put leftover barley in clay jars, sometimes adding water to soften husks. With moisture, barley's enzymes kick in, converting starch to sugar. Then wild yeast drifted in, and voila, after a while, folks got this weird fermy liquid. Beer! Archaeology shows beer drinking in the late Stone Age with 30,000 BC, murals depicting groups enjoying it. Soon, people discovered beer could be distilled for higher alcohol, just like wine. And distilled beer? That's whiskey, our old friend. Even today, Scots and Irish still feud over who invented whiskey. But it's undeniable this region birthed whiskey. The unique climate, long, damp summers, perfectly builds starch in barley. More starch means more sugar and alcohol. By the 15th century, Britons distilled whiskey, dubbing it water of life. Oh, here's a whiskey tip. Add a few drops of water to enhance flavor and aroma. The author recommends about 5 to 6 drops per 30 milliliters of whiskey. Science backs this. 98% of any liquor is identical, just water and alcohol. The remaining 2% makes each spirit unique. In whiskey, these flavor molecules are fatty acids. Adding water releases them as floaters. Though it clouds the whiskey, it fully unlocks those flavors. Research confirms this. Scientists studied guaiacol, a molecule in alcohol versus water. Guaiacol is one of whiskey's key flavor molecules. At high alcohol, guaiacol gets trapped, muting aroma. Diluting frees it, boosting richness. So watering down can be a shady trick or a connoisseur's secret weapon. All right, having covered barley and beer, let's examine wheat. Compared to barley, wheat packs more protein, great for elasticity and shelf life, making it ideal as food. Like wheat's the main grain in most bread. But for brewers, Wheat's probably their biggest headache. Like barley, brewing requires fermenting wheat starch. But wheat's protein content is so high that starch gets trapped inside thick protein layers, making it unusable. So wheat fermentation yields pitifully little alcohol. And worse, these proteins make fermenting wheat gooey and the final brew super cloudy. Yet, you've probably heard of Germany's famous wheat beer. How does that work? Well, despite the name, wheat beer is only about 55% wheat. The rest is barley. Pure wheat can't brew properly, so why bother? The answer? Still protein. Take one sip and you'll notice its unique aroma, like bread or citrus, all thanks to high protein content. Plus, German wheat beer is renowned for thick foam, mostly dissolved wheat protein. Nowadays, some brewers add wheat specifically to get that luscious foam. So this troublesome protein actually gives wheat beer its unique experience. Beyond barley and wheat, flavor and agents play crucial roles too. For beer, the most essential flavoring is hops. Hops are vine-like plants. Many mistakenly think beer is brewed from hops due to the name. Having covered production, let's explore how different plants shape alcohol's taste. So what role do hops play? Next up, hops' story, starting with their function. As beer's flavoring agent, hops add its signature bitterness. Imagine beer without that distinctive bitter kick. Unthinkable. Also, ever notice leftover beer stinks when light hits the bottle? That actually comes from a hop compound that breaks down in light, creating that foul odor. Oh, this explains why beer bottles are mostly brown or dark green, to protect hops from too much light. Nowadays, you see lots of clear bottles too, because mass-produced beer today uses chemical substitutes for real hops, and these synthetics don't break down in light. Hops need strict growing conditions, only between 35 to 55 degrees north latitude, and places like Germany, Belgium, and the Czech Republic fit perfectly. That's why beers from these European countries taste amazing. Big part is they're great for hop farming. Way back in 736 AD, hop farms were set up in Bavaria, Germany. In medieval Europe, monks handled brewing and medicine, so monasteries became the main spots for hop growing. With this plant, beer flavor improved a ton, and monks used the profits to keep their monasteries running. Even today, top beer lists always feature a few Trappist or Abbey brews. Besides hops, let's chat about another plant that flavors booze. The spirit flavored with familiarity is famous gin. Y'all know, like the gin in books. At first, juniper berry might sound like fruit from a juniper plant, but nope, it's actually the cone of European juniper. Its East Asian cousins are called Chinese juniper, found in China and Japan. Though similar to European juniper in looks and type, it's mainly used as ornamental trees or in medicine. More accurately, juniper berries are cones with two special compounds. One gives off a pine-like scent. The other emits a citrusy aroma. Since gin's base is barley and rye, gin flavored with these berries blends fresh botanical notes with a rich taste. Beyond drinking it straight, gin's other big role is mixing cocktails. Among gin-based cocktails, the most famous is the martini, hailed as the king of cocktails. Notable martini fans include U.S. President Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Churchill, and famous writer Hemingway. Oh, rumor has it Hemingway mixed martinis even on battlefields. That drink's linked to charismatic masculinity inspired 7-Seven's creator to make it the screen spy's signature. James Bond's drink of choice? A vodka martini. A martini's core ingredients are gin and vermouth. Note, many mistranslate vermouth as absinthe, a long-standing error. Vermouth's an aromatized wine mainly used in cocktails. Real absinthe packs an anise punch at up to 70% ABV. Tweaking gin-vermouth ratios creates diverse martinis. Officially, there are 260-plus martini variations, not counting bartenders' secret recipes. Today, the martini symbolizes cocktails and nightlife. Bar signs often feature its olive-speared glass. Now, shifting from Western drinks to Eastern. Take Japanese sake, rice-based, with starch as its main nutrient like other grains. So we need to convert that starch to sugar. In the West, brewers use barley malt. But in Japan, koji mold handles this. It breaks starch into sugar and also ferments tofu and miso. Even with koji, crafting premium sake isn't instant. Key reason, rice nutrients aren't evenly distributed. In each grain, starch concentrates at the core, while other nutrients sit in outer layers. That means milling away the outer bran to expose the pure, starchy core, letting koji work its magic. This milling process, called saimai, demands extreme patience. It's brutally hard, removing all bran without crushing grains, keeping each kernel intact. For millennia, saimai's essence remains unchanged. Even with modern tools, grains pass over rough stones hundreds of times, taking days to achieve perfect purity. How much rice is polished is the core metric for judging sake quality, reflected in its naming rules. The highest quality sake is called dajinjo, meaning at least 50% of the rice's outer layer is removed during polishing. Next is jinjo, with over 40% removed. Regular sake is junmai, with no polishing requirement, but it must be stated on the bottle. High-quality sake tastes pure and refreshing, with aromas of pear and tropical fruits, sometimes nutty notes. Here, we'll introduce how to drink sake. In movies and TV, we often see people pour sake into a flask and heat it in hot water. However, the book's author advises that truly good sake shouldn't be heated. Heating releases alcohol and flavor molecules to mask the poor taste of low-quality sake. Hot sake smells fragrant at first, but the taste isn't satisfying. Fine sake brewing is complex, preserving fruity ester molecules that need cold storage. Therefore, Jinjo sake is best served chilled. Of course, how to savor a drink is a personal thing. Often, the drinking atmosphere and company matter more than the drink itself. All right, that covers the book's main content. People use wisdom and passion to turn plants into fine wine. Through subtle chemical reactions, plants make wine more enticing. Enjoy wine responsibly to better savor nature's gifts. Okay, that's the end of our take on The Drunken Botanist. Reading notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.